starts. Let's start with the start of the week. Jamie, you knocked out of the park in week 1 with Tua. Who was it last week?
Jared Goff.
Okay. Now this week, you are going with a guy that seems like a shoe-in to have a good week because he already has 3 touchdowns this season at running back.
I hope so. You know, not a lot of people have a lot of faith in the 31-year-old running back, but they should, because Raheem Mostert's in for a great opportunity this week taking on the Denver Broncos, because not only is Jeff Wilson not there, now Savon Ahmed may not be there, and he played 73% of the snaps each of the first 2 games. He might be looking at 80+, you know, and has a chance to just really hit a home run once again. You know, the Broncos coming across the country, 1 o'clock start. That's always a tough thing for those West Coast teams. And this is their first road game since the 2nd game of the preseason. They haven't left Denver since August 19th. So the humidity is going to be a problem for that defense. I think Raheem Mostert's going to be a problem for that defense, because if you try to take away the passing game of the Dolphins, then they're just going to run, as we saw against the Patriots. So the setup is absolutely perfect for him, and I think as long as this guy is healthy right now and not facing competition, he should be in your lineup. So you see 80% started. It wasn't the case on Wednesday. Hopefully it's up to 100% by the time we get to Sunday. That was Easy Choice presented by Geico, Jamie's start of the week.
And 2 of your 3 start of the weeks have been Dolphins players. So I mean, if you're a Dolphins fan, good news for you. Dave, we're going to talk more about running backs. Who do we start? Who do we sit? I know running backs are like our favorite topic to discuss.
People need help. Everybody's falling off or getting hurt. It's terrible right now. And one guy who's fallen off over the first 2 weeks of the season is Najee Harris, but he's taken on some tough defenses. I think he bounces back in week 3 against Vegas. And Vegas was okay in week 1 against Denver. They held up against the Broncos running backs. I don't think that's anything to write home about. But last week at Buffalo, nearly 180 rush yards to the Bills running backs. James Cook, the 2 other guys there. I think the Steelers coaching staff wants Najee Harris to be their guy. I think he can get 15 touches. I think he can score. That makes him a #2 fantasy running back at minimum. He probably wouldn't be there if everybody were healthy, but he's there right now, and the matchup's good for the Steelers against Las Vegas.
And when it comes to your sits for running back, Zach Moss, that's someone that you have?
I do.
Yeah.
And he got a lot of work last week. He had a great matchup last week. This week, whoop, 180. It's going to be a tougher matchup for him against the Ravens. They've looked great against the run this year. That offensive line, huge question mark for Indianapolis. And I like that Gardner Minshew's there for him, but I don't think he can go and get 100 total yards and a touchdown on top of that. I think he's going to struggle a little bit.
I have Najee, and I'm like this close to sitting him, but now that I've heard your advice, I might change my mind.
It depends on who else you have. He's not a slam dunk start, but we should feel better about him this week than in the past.
And the thing you do with this is, if he does have this good game, because I agree with Dave, I think he should have an opportunity, then you try and trade him. Because there are a lot of people right now, no Jonathan Taylor, no Austin Eckler, no Saquon Barkley. A lot of people searching for running back help, and the name still carries some weight. You know, so if he does have this strong performance, well, he's not that overweight, but if he does carry a strong performance here against the Raiders on Monday night, people will see it, and excuse me, Sunday night, people will see it, and then you can try and flip him for something that might be a little bit better long term.
I'm not one to talk. I had ribs for lunch.
Dave, you've looked the exact same for 20 years. We've seen the video of you and Jamie sitting together 20 years ago. Jamie looks like he's like 10 years old. Let's move on to quarterback starts and sits, Jamie, and you're going to the same division, the NFC North.
Well, Kirk Cousins, I don't think people have realized just how good he's been, because he hasn't been in a lot of lineups the last couple of weeks, and maybe that was my fault last week for saying to sit him, because I didn't think he would do as well against Philadelphia with that defensive front. But this is just a matchup that should light up the scoreboard between both quarterbacks, because Justin Herbert and Kirk Cousins have a great opportunity here. We always like to look at the point total from Vegas. This is the highest one of the week at 54, and I think it will live up to the billing. May not get to that total, but should be, you know, both of these teams putting up a lot of points. And the Vikings right now, they're trying to fix their run game, as we saw, trying to get some help in the backfield for Alexander Mattison by acquiring Cam Akers, but the offense right now has been funneling through Kirk Cousins. Jordan Addison's gotten off to a good start with 2 touchdowns. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, T.J. Hawkinson. So this is going to be a game, I think, where both these teams go back and forth, and Cousins, as you see here, has top 5 upside. Should have an unbelievable week in week number 3.
I went out on the waiver wire, got him, so I'm hoping for good things. Justin Fields, the quarterback of my favorite team. Are we reaching a point where we're looking at just cutting bait with this guy?
No, you should not do that. And we saw last year he got off to a slow start too, and it was right around week 4, week 5 where he actually took off and had, you know, the season that we remember. And I think the thing that he's frustrated with, we're all frustrated with, let him be the playmaker that he's capable of being. Let him go out there and do some of the things that enhances his game, as opposed to let's just force him to be a pocket passer.
What does he have, 3 design runs?
4 design runs on the season. It's an absolute disaster. So I think what we'll see is garbage time will matter here, because you know they're going to be chasing points in Kansas City. Even if he was playing great at this point, you have a little bit of concern. The thing about this Chiefs defense is they've been fantastic the first 2 games. They held Jared Goff to 1 touchdown. They really shut down Trevor Lawrence from having some end zone opportunities. He was moving the ball up and down the field, just couldn't get into the end zone. So the young players in Kansas City's defense, especially with Chris Jones back, looked really good last week. However, we'll see a big game from the Chiefs early, and then maybe Justin Fields being Justin Fields late in the game. So he's not an outright sit, as you see where he is ranked for me, right at the cusp of a #1 quarterback. But again, not to the point where we were drafting him, which was a top 5 guy.
And I was talking with our colleague Brandon Baylor, and he obviously took Justin Fields and his team, but he also has Dak, and he said, I think I'm going to sit Justin Fields and start Dak. And Dave, Dak is one of your starts for quarterback.
I think he's one of the safest quarterbacks you could use this week. He's taking on Arizona, so the matchups look good, but the Cardinals have actually hung in there against some offenses this year. So don't expect it to be like week 1 for Dak Prescott, where he barely threw the football and didn't give a lot of fantasy points. Every quarterback to face the Cardinals has thrown at least 31 passes. Every quarterback to play the Cardinals has scored at least 2 touchdowns. So I think Dak is safe to get you between 20 and 23 fantasy points. The matchup isn't that tough, but they will hang around. The Cardinals have been pretty decent this year. And I'm staying away from Deshaun Watson. He just has not looked like himself. Last week was an abject failure. He had 3 turnovers in the game. And the Titans' defense, their pass defense isn't as good as their run defense, but I still think that Watson's going to struggle a little bit. I don't feel good about using him. I'd rather start Fields than Watson. I don't know how Jamie feels about it, but I think Watson's upside is better than, or I'm sorry, Fields' upside is better than Watson's upside, and they both have terrible downside.
And the thing with Watson you got to worry about now is he doesn't have his crutch. So he doesn't have the run game to support him, at least based on what has
Not
been
the
there.
Same type of run game, yeah.
Jerome Ford, they're going to struggle to run the ball, and I think putting it on Deshaun Watson is where you don't want to see this game going for the Browns, because he just has not looked good through the first 2 weeks. The one thing, though, about Dak is they've hung in, the Cardinals have, with nowhere near the same level of competition that they're going to face this week from the Cowboys.
Sure,
so now you don't have Budda Baker on the other side. This could be a game where the Cowboys do whatever they want to. So Dak may just be successful, but the ceiling, I think, is a little bit capped. So that's why I'm a little bit concerned about calling him a must-start guy.
Low-end guy, low-end starter.
Sure.
Low-end starter.
Wide receiver starts and sits. Jamie, your starter this week struggled last week, but a really good matchup in week 3, or at least it appears that way on paper.
Unbelievable matchup, for Zay Flowers. And you're talking about a situation, you're alluding to last week, Mark Andrews came back. And so we saw a great week 1 where he was the focal point, and then Andrews comes back, understandably so. They're still working through this offense. But this defense that he's facing, this Colts defense, has just been absolutely miserable to perimeter wide receivers. You saw it in week 1 with what the Jaguars were able to do. You saw it in week 2 with what the Texans were able to do. And so now Zay Flowers has a chance to build off that. So it's been a great start to the rookie wide receiver class in a couple of areas. Jordan Addison with the touchdowns, Puka Nacua, who we all thought was going to be a star.
Oh, sure.
I mean, just check our preseason ranking. And then Zay Flowers, 1 great game, 1 disappointing game. But I do think this is the next iteration of what this Todd Monken offense will start to look like, is getting 2 guys involved. So it will be Mark Andrews, it will be Zay Flowers. Lamar's going to have a huge game against this Colts defense.
My start at wide receiver, Nico Collins, at least 14 PPR points in each game for Houston, who's been forced into pass-heavy game scripts. That's good for a wideout who's got a 23% target share. I don't think the Jaguars' defense looks as good as the numbers say, so I think Collins comes through with another big game.
When it comes to sitting, Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas is a sit. He's doing a good role for the Saints. He's getting around 12, 14 PPR points per game. Don't like the matchup for him against Green Bay's outside corners. That's where he lines up. You want to play against the slot cornerback in Green Bay if you're going to play at all. That's where Olave is going to be. That's where Rashid Shaheed's going to be. Those guys I like. Thomas, very nervous.
Starts, sits, and you can even find sleepers at CBSSports.com on the football fantasy page. Dave Richard and Jamie Eisenberg here. You can hear them on the Fantasy Football Today podcast with Heath Cummings, Adam Azer, and others. Watch now, scan that QR code, and it'll take you right there. Download the app and subscribe.